The sound of expensive leather shoes clicking against marble floors echoed through the 42nd floor of the Barrett Industries Tower. Below, Manhattan stretched endlessly, its lights twinkling like scattered diamonds against the evening sky. But inside the glass-walled conference room, something felt wrong. The air was thick with the kind of tension that comes before a storm, and 23-year-old Elise Thompson could feel it in her bones as she quietly refilled crystal water glasses around the mahogany table. She had been working events like this for 2 years now, moving invisible through rooms full of powerful people who never really saw her. Tonight was different though. Tonight, there was a chess set at the center of the table, its pieces carved from what looked like real ivory and obsidian. The sight of it made her hands shake slightly as she poured water, memories flooding back like a dam had burst. "Ladies and gentlemen," boomed CEO Logan Barrett, his voice cutting through the low murmur of conversation. He was a tall man in his 50s, with silver hair and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. "Welcome to our quarterly executive retreat. I thought we'd start with something fun tonight. A little chess exhibition." The executives around the table, all men except for 2 women, all white except for one, chuckled and nodded. These were people who made decisions that affected thousands of employees, who moved millions of dollars with a phone call. They looked at the chess set like it was an amusing toy. "Now, I know what you're thinking," Logan continued, picking up the white king and turning it in his hands. "Barrett, you old fool, chess is hardly a team-building exercise. But I've been thinking about strategy lately. About how we see the board, so to speak. About recognizing talent where we least expect it." Elise tried to make herself smaller as she worked, but she couldn't help listening. Chess had once been her whole world. Before everything fell apart. "I was state champion in college," Logan said, setting the king back down. "Haven't lost a game in years. But I'm always looking for a worthy opponent." His eyes swept the room, landing briefly on each executive. "Anyone here think they can take me on?" The responses came quickly. "You'd destroy us, Logan. I can barely remember how the horse moves. Save some dignity for the rest of us." Logan laughed, the sound echoing off the glass walls. "Come now, surely someone here plays. What about you, Patricia? You're always 3 steps ahead in the boardroom." Patricia Chin, the chief financial officer, shook her head with a smile. "Numbers are my game, not chess pieces. You'd have me in checkmate before I figured out which way the castle moves." "The rook," corrected Thomas Webb, the chief operating officer. "It's called a rook, not a castle. Though I suppose that's about the extent of my chess knowledge right there." More laughter filled the room. Elise continued her work, trying to be invisible, but the chess set seemed to call to her. She knew every piece, every possible move, every strategy. Her fingers itched to touch the smooth carved figures. "Well, this is disappointing," Logan said, settling into his chair at the head of the table. "Here I am, looking for a challenge and surrounded by the brightest business minds in the city, and not one of you plays chess. How are we supposed to think strategically if we can't even—" He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes falling on Elise as she reached across the table to refill his glass. She froze, water pitcher in hand, suddenly the center of attention. "You know what?" Logan said, a strange smile playing at his lips. "Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place for competition." The room went quiet. Elise felt 20 pairs of eyes on her, and her heart started beating faster. She knew that look. She'd seen it before in other rooms with other powerful people. It was the look that came right before humiliation. "You," Logan said, pointing at her. "What's your name?" "Elise, sir," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Elise. Pretty name. Tell me, Elise, do you play chess?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Elise glanced around the room, seeing smirks starting to form on several faces. She could feel the trap closing around her, but she couldn't lie. "Not about chess." "A little, sir." The smirks grew wider. Someone actually chuckled. "A little?" Logan repeated, leaning back in his chair. "How interesting. You know what, everybody? I think I've found my opponent for tonight." The room erupted in barely contained laughter. Executive Assistant Sarah Mills actually snorted, covering her mouth with her hand. "Logan, you can't be serious," she said. "Oh, but I am," Logan replied, his smile getting wider. "Think about it. Here we are, talking about recognizing talent, about strategic thinking, about seeing the whole board. What better way to demonstrate than with a friendly game?" "Logan," Thomas said, trying to control his laughter, "the poor girl probably learned chess from some app on her phone. This hardly seems fair." "It's not about fair," Logan said, standing up and walking around the table toward Elise. "It's about perspective. About remembering that everyone has something to teach us, even if we don't expect it. He was using his corporate speech voice now, the one he used when he wanted to sound inspiring and inclusive. But Elise could see the real game. This wasn't about learning or perspective. This was about entertainment. She was about to become the evening's joke. What do you say, Elise? Logan asked, now standing directly in front of her. Care to give it a try? I promise I'll go easy on you. More snickers from around the table. Elise looked down at the chess set, her throat tight. She thought about her mother, who had taught her to play on a cheap plastic set in their tiny apartment. She thought about the tournaments she'd won as a teenager, the trophies gathering dust in her closet. She thought about the dreams she'd had to give up. I don't want to waste your time, sir, she said quietly. Nonsense. Logan boomed. It'll be fun. Educational even. For all of us. He was already moving pieces around, setting up the board. The executives were settling in to watch the show, phones coming out to record what they clearly expected to be a quick and amusing defeat. I insist, Logan said, and it wasn't really a request anymore. Elise set down the water pitcher with trembling hands. She looked around the room one more time, seeing the expectant faces, the barely hidden grins, the phones pointed at her. She thought about walking away, about making some excuse and leaving. But then she looked at the chessboard and something inside her clicked into place. Okay, she said, so quietly that Logan had to lean forward to hear her. Excellent, he exclaimed, clapping his hands together. This should be interesting. He had no idea how interesting it was about to become. As Elise walked slowly around the table toward the chair opposite Logan, she felt the weight of every eye in the room. This was the moment before everything changed. The moment before they all learned that sometimes, the person you least expect to have power is the one who's been holding all the cards the entire time. The chess pieces sat waiting on the board, silent and still. But in a few minutes, they would tell a story that none of these executives would ever forget. Elise lowered herself slowly into the leather chair across from Logan Barrett, her cleaning uniform a stark contrast to the expensive suits surrounding her. The mahogany table felt massive between them, and the chess set looked like it belonged in a museum. Each piece was perfectly carved, the white ones gleaming like fresh snow, the black ones dark as midnight. Now then, Logan said, straightening his tie and cracking his knuckles, I should probably warn you that I take my chess seriously. I've been playing for over 30 years. That's impressive, sir, Elise replied, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. The executives had arranged themselves around the table like spectators at a boxing match. Patricia had her phone out, clearly planning to record what she expected to be a quick and embarrassing defeat. Thomas was whispering something to Sarah that made her giggle. I'll take white, Logan announced, not bothering to ask if she had a preference. Since I'm the challenger after all. He moved his king's pawn forward 2 squares, the classic opening move. E4. Elise stared at the board, and suddenly she wasn't in the 42nd floor conference room anymore. She was 12 years old, sitting at a folding table in their cramped apartment, her mother's gentle voice explaining the beauty of chess. Chess is like life, baby girl, her mother had said, moving her own pawn to mirror the position on the board in front of Elise now. It's not about the fancy pieces or the expensive board. It's about seeing patterns, thinking ahead, protecting what matters most. Elise blinked, coming back to the present. Logan was watching her expectantly, probably wondering if she even knew how to move the pieces. Around the table, the executives were getting restless. Take your time, Logan said with false patience. There's no rush. But there was. Elise could feel it in the way Patricia kept checking her watch, in the way Thomas drummed his fingers on the table. They were all waiting for this to be over so they could get back to their important business. They saw her as a brief intermission, a moment of levity before returning to the serious work of making money. She reached out and moved her king's pawn forward 2 squares as well. E5. The Sicilian defense came to mind, but she chose the king's pawn game instead. Something told her to keep things simple at first. Good, Logan said, sounding surprised that she'd made a legal move. You do know how to play. More chuckles from the peanut gallery. Elise kept her eyes on the board, but her mind was drifting again. Back to when she was 15, sitting across from her mother in the hospital room. The cancer had already taken so much, but her mother's mind was still sharp as a blade. Promise me something, Elise, her mother had whispered, her hand barely strong enough to move the chess pieces on the magnetic board they'd brought from home. Promise me you won't let them make you smaller than you are. You have a gift. Don't let the world convince you to hide it. But that's exactly what Elise had done, wasn't it? For 8 years she'd hidden her gift, buried it under the weight of responsibility and survival. After her mother died, There had been no time for chess tournaments or college applications. Her two younger siblings needed her. The bills needed paying. Dreams were luxuries she couldn't afford. Logan made his second move, bringing out his king's bishop. A standard development, nothing fancy. He was playing like someone who'd learned chess from books and weekend games at the country club. Solid but predictable. Elise responded by developing her king's knight, and she saw Logan's eyebrows raise slightly. It was a good move and he knew it. Not bad, he admitted. Where did you learn to play? My mother taught me, Elise said quietly. Ah, family games, Logan nodded. I learned from my father too. Though I suspect my early training was a bit more intensive. He said it like he was talking about prep school or private tutors, which he probably was. Elise didn't mention that her mother had learned chess from a janitor at the community center where she worked, who had once been a tournament player before alcohol destroyed his career. She didn't mention the hours they'd spend analyzing games from library books, or the way her mother would wake up early to practice tactics before her double shifts at the diner. The game continued, both players developing their pieces. Logan was clearly trying to impress his audience, making his moves with flourish and providing commentary. You see, the key to chess, he said, castling kingside, is pattern recognition. Most amateur players just react to threats. But a real chess player thinks several moves ahead. Elise nodded politely and castled as well. She was thinking 7 moves ahead, but she didn't mention that. Logan's being too kind, Patricia said from the sidelines. He could probably have you in checkmate in 10 moves if he wanted to. Where's the fun in that? Logan laughed. Besides, I'm curious to see what she does when real pressure starts. Real pressure. Elise almost smiled. These people had no idea what real pressure looked like. Real pressure was working 3 jobs while taking care of 2 teenagers. Real pressure was choosing between groceries and electricity. Real pressure was sitting in a guidance counselor's office at 17, scholarship papers in front of you, knowing you couldn't sign them because your family needed you more than you needed your dreams. Logan brought out his queen early, a move that made several of the executives murmur approvingly. It looked aggressive and powerful. But Elise saw it for what it was, a mistake. The queen was too exposed, too vulnerable. Her mother had taught her about overconfident opponents. Sometimes the loudest person in the room is the one with the least to say, baby girl. Watch the quiet ones. They're usually the ones who really know what they're doing. Elise developed another piece, seemingly ignoring Logan's queen. But she was setting a trap, one that would take several more moves to spring. Logan, emboldened by what he saw as her passive play, pushed forward more aggressively. You're very defensive, he observed. That's not going to win you the game, you know. I'm still learning, sir, Elise replied, moving a pawn that looked insignificant but was actually part of a larger plan. Learning, Thomas repeated with a snort. Logan, you're going to give her a complex. I think she can handle it, Logan said, but his tone suggested he was already thinking about how to end the game quickly. Can't you, Elise? She looked up at him for the first time since the game began. His face was kind but condescending, the expression of someone who thought he was being generous by not crushing her immediately. Around the table, the executives were clearly getting bored. This wasn't the quick entertainment they'd expected. I can handle it, she said quietly. Something in her tone made Logan look at her more carefully. For just a moment, his confident smile flickered. But then he shook his head and made another aggressive move, attacking one of her knights. Elise moved the knight to safety but not where Logan expected. Instead of retreating, she moved it to a square that put pressure on his position. It was a bold move, one that suggested she wasn't just reacting anymore. Interesting, Logan murmured, studying the board more carefully now. The executives were still chatting among themselves, but their attention was starting to drift back to the game. Something was shifting, though they couldn't quite put their finger on what. Elise looked at the board and saw her mother's face in the carved pieces. She saw the tiny apartment where they'd practiced for hours, the second-hand chess books with pages falling out, the tournaments she'd won with borrowed entry fees. She saw the moment when everything changed, when the call came from the hospital and her world rearranged itself around loss and responsibility. But she also saw something else. She saw the game her mother had never finished teaching her, the one where you don't just survive, you win. Your move, sir, she said, and Logan heard something in her voice that made him sit up straighter. The real game was just beginning. Logan Barrett stared at the chessboard with growing concentration. What had started as a light-hearted demonstration was beginning to require actual thought. The young woman across from him had just made her 7th move, and it wasn't the move he'd expected. Clever, he said, trying to keep his voice casual. You're creating some interesting pressure on the queen's side. The executives around the table were still treating this as entertainment, but Logan was starting to see patterns in Elise's play that made him uncomfortable. Her pieces were working together in ways that suggested real understanding, not just beginner's luck. Elise said nothing, just waited for his move. She'd grown quieter as the game progressed, her initial nervousness replaced by something that looked almost like meditation. Her eyes moved across the board with the kind of focus Logan usually only saw in mirrors. Is she actually giving you trouble? Patricia asked with a laugh. Logan, please tell me you're not going to lose to the cleaning lady. Of course not, Logan replied, but he was taking longer with each move now. I'm just exploring different possibilities. He pushed his bishop forward, attacking one of her pawns. It looked like a strong move, putting pressure on her position. The executives murmured approvingly. But Elise didn't look worried. She studied the board for a moment, then made a move that seemed to ignore his threat entirely. Instead of defending the attacked pawn, she brought her rook into the game, placing it on an open file. She's going to lose that pawn, Thomas observed. Doesn't she see the attack? Logan looked at the position more carefully. He could indeed capture the pawn, but something about the way her rook was positioned made him hesitate. It was like she was daring him to take it. What's the matter, Logan? Patricia taunted. Free pawn right there for the taking. Logan reached for his bishop, then stopped. The more he looked at the position, the more he realized that capturing the pawn would put his bishop in danger. Her rook would have a powerful attack, and his king was starting to look exposed. He pulled his hand back and made a different move instead, developing another piece. Better to be safe. Smart, Elise said quietly. It was the first time she'd spoken since her last move, and something in her tone made the room go quiet for a moment. Smart? Logan repeated. Not taking the pawn, she explained. It was trapped. Logan looked at the board again, following the lines of attack. She was right. If he'd captured the pawn, her rook would have pinned his bishop to his king. He would have lost a piece worth 3 times more than the pawn he'd gained. Lucky guess, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Was it? Elise asked and made her next move. The move was stunning in its simplicity. She advanced a central pawn, but the pawn wasn't just moving forward. It was opening lines for her bishops and creating space for her pieces to coordinate. In one move, she'd improved her position dramatically. Logan felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't the play of someone who'd learned chess from phone apps or casual family games. This was the kind of move that came from years of serious study. Where did you say you learned to play? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. I didn't say, Elise replied, not looking up from the board. The executives were starting to pay closer attention now. The casual chatter had died down and phones were being put away. Something about the intensity building between the two players was drawing them in. Logan made his next move more carefully, but he was starting to feel like he was playing catch-up. Every time he created a threat, she seemed to have an answer. Every time he tried to seize the initiative, she found a way to keep the balance. This is taking longer than expected, Sarah commented, but she was leaning forward now, studying the board with interest. Good chess takes time, Elise said without looking up. My mother used to say that rushing leads to mistakes. Your mother was a chess player? Logan asked, genuinely curious now. She was a lot of things, Elise replied, moving her queen for the first time. The move was like a thunderbolt. Suddenly Logan's king was under direct pressure. Check, she said quietly. The word sent a ripple of surprise through the room. Logan's eyes widened as he realized his king was indeed in danger. He'd been so focused on his own plans that he'd missed the building attack. Well, Patricia said, her tone changed completely. Maybe this is more interesting than we thought. Logan studied the board, looking for the best way to get out of check. He had 3 options: move the king, block the attack, or capture the attacking piece. But as he analyzed each possibility, he realized they all led to disadvantageous positions. He moved his king to safety, but the move felt like a retreat. For the first time in the game, he was reacting to her threats instead of creating his own. Elise followed up immediately, bringing another piece into the attack. Her pieces were starting to work together like a well-trained orchestra, each one supporting the others. She's good, Thomas said, and there was no mockery in his voice now. Logan, she's actually good. Logan nodded grimly. He was beginning to understand that he'd made a serious miscalculation. This wasn't going to be the easy victory he'd expected. This was going to be a fight. How long have you been playing? He asked as he deliberated over his next move. 15 years, Elise answered. Since I was 8. 15 years. Logan did the math and realized she'd been playing chess longer than some of his executives had been with the company. But why was she working as cleaning staff if she had this kind of skill? He made his move, trying to create counterplay on the other side of the board. But Elise responded with a move that was so strong, so perfectly timed, that several of the executives actually gasped. "That's brilliant," Patricia whispered, studying the position. "She's completely reorganized the center of the board." Logan felt sweat beading on his forehead. This was not how this evening was supposed to go. He was supposed to be demonstrating leadership, showing his team how to think strategically. Instead, he was being outplayed by someone they'd all been ready to laugh at 20 minutes ago. "Your move, sir," Elise said, and her voice was perfectly calm. Logan looked at the board, then at her face. She wasn't gloating or showing off. She was just playing chess the way someone might breathe or walk. Natural. Effortless. "Where did you learn to play like this?" he asked. "I told you," she said. "My mother taught me." "Your mother must have been quite a player." For the first time since the game began, Elise looked up from the board and met his eyes directly. "She was the best person I ever knew," she said. Chess was just one of the things she was good at. There was something in her voice, a mixture of love and loss that made Logan realize there was a story here he didn't understand. But before he could ask more questions, she gestured to the board. "It's still your move." Logan looked down at the chess pieces, and for the first time in years, he wasn't sure what to do next. The young woman across from him had turned his comfortable world upside down in less than an hour, and they were barely halfway through the game. The worst part was, he was starting to suspect that she was just getting started. The conference room had fallen into an unusual silence. The only sounds were the soft tick of the wall clock and the occasional clink of chess pieces against the marble board. What had begun as casual entertainment had transformed into something much more serious, and everyone could feel the shift. Logan Barrett wiped his palms on his expensive suit pants, something he hadn't done since his first job interview 30 years ago. Across from him, Elise Thompson sat with the stillness of someone completely in their element. Her uniform, navy blue with "Elite Event Services" embroidered on the pocket, seemed to fade into the background as her presence filled the space. "This is incredible," whispered Sarah Mills to Patricia Chin. "Look at his face." Logan's usual confidence had been replaced by intense concentration. The easy smile that had dominated the first half of the game was gone, replaced by the focused expression of someone who realized they were in real trouble. Elise moved her bishop, a seemingly quiet move that nevertheless sent ripples of possibility across the board. Logan studied the position for a full 3 minutes before responding, longer than he'd taken for any move so far. "I have to ask," said Thomas Webb, leaning forward, "where exactly did you learn to play at this level?" Elise glanced up briefly. "I played in tournaments when I was younger." "What kind of tournaments?" Patricia pressed. "State championships. Some nationals." The words hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't quite exploded yet. Logan's head snapped up from the board. "You played in national tournaments?" "A few times." Elise's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing the weather. "Did you? How did you do?" "I won some games. Lost some games." Logan felt a cold realization settling in his stomach. "What was your rating?" For the first time, Elise hesitated. "It was a long time ago." "What was your rating?" Logan repeated, more firmly this time. 2,100, she said quietly. The number hit the room like a physical blow. Patricia's phone slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the table. Thomas actually stood up from his chair. 2,100? Logan's voice cracked slightly. "You were an expert-level player?" Elise nodded, then returned her attention to the board. Logan stared at her, his mind reeling. A 2,100 rating meant she'd been among the top 1% of chess players in the country. He'd been bragging about his state college championship to someone who'd competed with masters. "Jesus Christ," Thomas breathed. "Logan, do you know what you've gotten yourself into?" Logan was beginning to understand exactly what he'd gotten himself into. His own rating back in college had been around 1,400. He'd improved over the years, but probably not beyond 1,600. He was playing someone who was at least 500 rating points stronger than him, which in chess terms meant she should win 95 games out of 100. "Why didn't you say something?" he asked. Elise looked up from the board again, and for a moment, Logan saw something vulnerable in her eyes. Would it have mattered? The question hung in the air. Logan thought about his casual invitation, his condescending tone, the way he'd treated this as a joke for his executive's entertainment. Would he have asked her to play if he'd known she could crush him? He started, then stopped. The honest answer was no, he wouldn't have. And everyone in the room knew it. Your move, Elise said gently. Logan looked down at the board, but the position might as well have been written in a foreign language. Every move he considered seemed to lead to worse problems. His pieces were tangled up, his king was unsafe, and her attack was building like a gathering storm. He made a move trying to defend, but even as his hand left the piece he knew it was wrong. Elise responded immediately, her piece striking like a snake. Check, she said, and Logan's heart sank as he realized his king was in danger again. She's systematically taking apart his position, Patricia observed, and there was awe in her voice now. This isn't luck. This is surgical. Logan moved his king, but he was just delaying the inevitable. Each move felt like he was sinking deeper into quicksand. His earlier confidence seemed like a joke now, a memory from a different lifetime. How long since you've played competitively? He asked, grasping for any hope that she might be rusty. I haven't played in a tournament for 8 years, Elise admitted. But I still play online sometimes. When I have time. 8 years. Logan felt a flicker of hope. Maybe her skills had deteriorated. Maybe. Elise made her next move and Logan's hope died. The move was perfect, beautiful in its simplicity and devastating in its effect. She was improving her position while simultaneously tightening the noose around his king. That's a master-level move, Thomas said quietly. I don't understand half of what's happening on that board, but I can see that was brilliant. The executives had completely abandoned any pretense of casual observation. They were all leaning forward now, studying the board, trying to follow the complex battle unfolding in front of them. The phones were out again, but this time they were recording something entirely different than what they'd expected. Logan was running out of options. Every defensive move he considered seemed to make things worse. He was trapped in a web of his own making, and the spider across from him was patiently waiting for the right moment to strike. I need to think, he said, leaning back in his chair. Take your time, Elise replied, but Logan could hear the politeness in her voice. She was being kind to him, the way an adult might be patient with a child who was struggling with a difficult puzzle. That realization stung more than the losing position. He'd started this game as a joke, treating her like entertainment for his executives. Now she was treating him with the gentle courtesy reserved for outmatched opponents. Can I ask you something? Logan said, still staring at the board. Of course. Why did you stop playing competitively? For the first time since the game began, Elise's composure wavered slightly. Her fingers, which had been steady throughout the match, trembled as she adjusted the position of her queen. Life got complicated, she said simply. But you were clearly talented. You could have had a career in chess. Could have doesn't pay the bills, Elise replied, and there was a hardness in her voice that made Logan look up. He saw something in her expression then, a glimpse of the weight she carried, the choices she'd been forced to make. He started to understand that the young woman across from him wasn't just talented at chess. She was someone who'd sacrificed her gifts for reasons he could only guess at. I'm sorry, he said and meant it. Don't be sorry, Elise replied. Just make your move. Logan looked at the board one more time, then moved his rook in what he knew was a desperate attempt to create complications. But Elise saw through it immediately, responding with a move that simplified the position while maintaining her overwhelming advantage. She's in complete control, Sarah observed. It's like watching a professional athlete play against a weekend warrior. That's exactly what it was, Logan realized. He challenged a professional without knowing it, and now he was being dismantled piece by piece in front of his entire leadership team. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd wanted to demonstrate strategic thinking to his executives. Instead, he was getting a lesson in what real strategic thinking looked like. And the lesson was far from over. As Logan pondered his increasingly desperate position, Elise's mind drifted to another chessboard, another time. She was 14 years old, sitting in the cramped living room of their apartment, the sound of her mother's cough echoing from the bedroom. Come on, baby girl, her mother had called weakly. Bring the board in here. Just because I'm sick doesn't mean your training stops. Elise had set up the magnetic chess set on the hospital bed they'd rented and placed in the living room when the stairs to the bedroom became too much for her mother to manage. Even with oxygen tubes in her nose and medication making her drowsy, Sarah Thompson's eyes had been sharp as ever when she looked at the chess pieces. Tell me about the Nationals, her mother had said, studying the position from their last game. Are you nervous? A little, Elise had admitted. What if I don't do well? What if I embarrass myself? You listen to me, Elise Marie Thompson, her mother had said, moving her queen across the board with a shaking hand. You don't play chess to impress anyone. You play because you love it, because it makes you think, because it shows you who you really are when everything else is stripped away. The memory was so vivid that Elise could almost smell the antiseptic and hear the hum of the oxygen machine. She blinked, returning to the present, where Logan was still agonizing over his next move. "Take your time," she said softly, though she could see exactly how the game would end. 3 different ways actually, depending on which mistakes he made. Her mother had been gone for 8 years now, but sometimes moments like this made it feel like yesterday. Chess had been their language, their way of connecting when words weren't enough. Even at the end, when the cancer had taken almost everything else, they could still communicate through the movement of pieces across a board. Logan finally made his move, a defensive maneuver that only delayed the inevitable. Elise responded quickly, her fingers moving with the muscle memory of thousands of games. "Check," she said again. This time Logan's face went pale. He could see it now, the net closing around his king, the walls closing in. He was maybe 6 moves away from checkmate, and everyone in the room could sense it. "She's incredible," Patricia whispered to Thomas. "Where has she been hiding?" Hiding. That was exactly what Elise had been doing, wasn't it? For 8 years she'd hidden her gift, buried it under the weight of responsibility and survival. After her mother died, there had been no time for tournaments or chess clubs. Her brother James had been 13 and getting into trouble at school. Her sister Monica had been only 10, still crying for their mother every night. Someone had to work. Someone had to pay rent. Someone had to make sure there was food in the refrigerator and that homework got done and that 2 grieving children didn't fall through the cracks of a system that didn't care about one more broken family. Elise had gotten her first job at 15, lying about her age to work at a fast food restaurant. She dropped out of the chess club, stopped going to tournaments, put away her chess books. Dreams were luxuries she couldn't afford. "Your move," she said to Logan, who was staring at the board like it might bite him. He moved his king again, the only legal move available. Elise followed up immediately, her attack reaching its crescendo. "How is this possible?" Logan asked, and his voice carried genuine bewilderment. "You're working as event staff. You're..." He stopped himself before he said something truly offensive. "I'm what?" Elise asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Logan looked around the room, suddenly aware that everyone was listening. I don't understand. Someone with your talent. Someone with my talent, what? Should be doing something more important than cleaning up after rich people?" The words hung in the air like a slap. Logan's face flushed red. "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it?" Elise moved another piece, tightening the noose. "You invited me to play as a joke. Entertainment for your executives? Did you think about what that said about how you see people like me?" The room was completely silent now. Even the tick of the clock seemed muted. Logan started, then stopped. He looked at the chess board, at his hopeless position, at the young woman who was systematically dismantling everything he thought he knew about talent and opportunity. "You want to know why I'm not playing professional chess?" Elise continued, her voice steady but carrying an edge that made everyone lean back slightly. "You want to know why someone with a 2,100 rating is refilling your water glasses?" She moved her rook, putting Logan's king in an impossible position. There was no escape now. Because when my mother died, I had a choice. I could chase my dreams or I could take care of my family. I could go to college on a chess scholarship, or I could make sure my 10-year-old sister had someone to help her with her homework. Logan stared at her, his own problems on the chess board suddenly seeming trivial. "I chose family," Elise said simply. "I've been working 3 jobs for 8 years to keep us together. Chess was something I did in my spare time when I had any. But I never stopped loving it." She paused, looking at the board where Logan's king sat trapped and helpless. "And I never stopped being good at it." The silence stretched on. Finally, Thomas cleared his throat. "Logan," he said quietly, "I think you need to resign." Logan looked at the board one more time, seeing the mate in 3 that was staring him in the face. He could drag it out, make her play the final moves, but there was no point. He was beaten and everyone knew it. But instead of tipping over his king, he looked across the table at Elise. "Before I resign," he said, "I need to say something." Elise waited. "I'm sorry," Logan said, and his voice carried genuine remorse. "I'm sorry for treating you like a joke. I'm sorry for assuming that because of your job, you couldn't be extraordinary at something else. And I'm sorry that someone with your gifts has been invisible to people like me for so long." Elise studied his face, looking for signs of insincerity. But Logan's expression was open, honest. Embarrassed but genuine. "I accept your apology," she said finally. Logan nodded, then reached out and tipped over his king. The sound of the wooden piece hitting the marble board echoed through the silent room. "Checkmate," he said. "You win." But as the executives began to murmur and shift in their seats, Elise realized that the game was just beginning. Something had changed in this room tonight, something that went far beyond chess. And she had a feeling that her life was about to change too. The sound of Logan's king hitting the marble board seemed to echo forever in the silent conference room. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. 23 executives who made million-dollar decisions every day sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they just witnessed. Then Patricia Chin started to clap. It began slowly, just her hands coming together in steady applause. Then Sarah joined in, followed by Thomas, until the entire room was filled with the sound of applause. Not the polite, obligatory clapping of corporate meetings, but genuine appreciation for something remarkable they'd just seen. Elise looked around the room in surprise. This wasn't what she'd expected. She'd prepared herself for awkward silence, maybe some uncomfortable jokes to break the tension. She hadn't expected this. "That was extraordinary," Patricia said, shaking her head in amazement. "Absolutely extraordinary." Logan was still staring at the chessboard, his tipped-over king lying among the other pieces like a fallen soldier. 22 moves, he said quietly. "You beat me in 22 moves." 23, Elise corrected gently. "But who's counting?" A few people chuckled, and Elise realized the tension in the room was finally beginning to break. But it was different now. The way they were looking at her had changed. She was no longer invisible. "Can I ask you something?" Thomas said, leaning forward. "That combination in the middle game where you sacrificed your bishop, did you see that from the beginning?" Elise thought about it. "I saw the possibility around move 12. But I wasn't sure it would work until you," she caught herself. "Until Mr. Barrett moved his queen to the wrong square." "The wrong square," Logan repeated with a rueful laugh. "Is that what you call it when someone walks into a trap?" "I call it learning," Elise said. "Every game teaches you something." "What did this game teach you?" Patricia asked. Elise was quiet for a moment, thinking. "That hiding who you are doesn't protect you. It just makes you smaller." The words seemed to hit Logan particularly hard. He winced, then nodded slowly. "And what did it teach me?" "I can't answer that for you," Elise said. "What do you think it taught you?" Logan stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. The city sparkled below them, thousands of lights representing millions of people, each with their own hidden talents and untold stories. "It taught me that I'm an idiot," he said finally, turning back to face the room. "It taught me that I've been surrounded by extraordinary people my whole life, and I've been too blind to see them." He walked back to the table and looked directly at Elise. "It taught me that talent doesn't care about your job title or your bank account or the color of your uniform. And it taught me that I've probably missed 100 opportunities to learn from people I dismissed without a second thought." 100 seems low, Sarah said dryly, earning another round of nervous laughter. Logan sat back down, but he didn't reset the chess pieces. Instead, he left them exactly as they were, a monument to his humbling. "Tell me about your family," he said to Elise. "You mentioned siblings." Elise hesitated. She wasn't used to sharing personal information with clients, especially not clients like this. But something about the way Logan asked, not entitled or demanding but genuinely interested, made her want to answer. "My brother James is 21 now. He's in community college studying automotive repair. My sister Monica is 18. She just graduated high school." "Are they proud of you?" Patricia asked. The question caught Elise off guard. "Proud of me? For taking care of them? For sacrificing your dreams so they could have theirs?" Elise felt her throat tighten unexpectedly. It wasn't a question she'd ever really considered. She'd done what needed to be done, what any older sister would do. Pride had never entered into it. "They don't know," she said quietly. "About the chess, I mean. They know I used to play, but they don't know how good I was. I didn't want them to feel guilty about the choices I made." "Choices you made," Logan repeated. "Not choices that were forced on you." "Does it matter?" Elise asked. "The result is the same." "It matters," Logan said firmly. "Because it means you're not just talented at chess. You're someone who puts others before yourself. You're someone who makes sacrifices without asking for credit. You're exactly the kind of person I need working for me." The words hung in the air. Elise stared at him, not sure she'd heard correctly. "Working for you?" "In a real capacity," Logan said, his voice gaining energy as he spoke. "Not as event staff. As a strategic consultant. Someone who can see patterns others miss, who can think several moves ahead." "Mr. Barrett," Elise said carefully. I appreciate the gesture, but… It's not a gesture, Logan interrupted. Look at what you just did. You walked into a room full of people who underestimated you, and you turned that underestimation into an advantage. You read the board, saw my weaknesses, and exploited them perfectly. That's not just chess skill, that's strategic thinking at the highest level. Thomas nodded enthusiastically. He's right. The way you managed the entire situation, letting us think we had the upper hand, staying calm under pressure, never revealing your strength until the perfect moment, that's exactly what we need in corporate strategy. But I don't have a business degree, Elise protested. I don't have experience in… You have something better than experience, Patricia said. You have natural ability. And you have perspective that none of us has. What kind of perspective? The perspective of someone who's had to fight for everything, Logan said. Who's had to make difficult decisions with limited resources. Who understands what it means when the stakes are real. Elise looked around the room at the faces watching her expectantly. A part of her wanted to say yes immediately, to grab this opportunity with both hands. But another part, the cautious part that had kept her family together for 8 years, was afraid to hope. What would I do? She asked. Strategic planning, Logan said. Market analysis. Competitive intelligence. Think of business as a giant chess game, with companies instead of pieces and market share instead of checkmate. You'd be analyzing our competitors, Thomas added. Looking for weaknesses we can exploit, strengths we need to defend against. Helping us think 3 moves ahead instead of just reacting to what happens. And the salary? Elise asked, trying to keep her voice casual. Logan named a figure that made her eyes widen. It was more than she made in a year working 3 jobs. It was enough to support her family comfortably, maybe even help James transfer to a 4-year college. Plus benefits, Patricia added. Health insurance, retirement contributions, educational reimbursement if you want to get that business degree. Educational reimbursement? Elise repeated. We invest in our people, Logan said. If you want to go back to school, we'll pay for it. Part-time, full-time, whatever works for your schedule. Elise felt tears threatening to spill over. After 8 years of barely getting by, of choosing between groceries and gas money, the idea of financial security seemed almost too good to believe. I need to think about it, she said. Of course, Logan said. Take all the time you need. But Elise. Yes. Don't let fear make this decision for you. You've been hiding your light under a bushel for 8 years. Maybe it's time to let it shine. As the executives began to file out of the conference room, chattering excitedly about what they'd witnessed, Elise sat alone with the chessboard. The pieces were still scattered from their game, frozen in the moment of her victory. She picked up her queen, the piece that had delivered the final decisive blow, and held it up to the light. For 8 years she'd convinced herself that she was done with chess, done with dreams, done with anything beyond just surviving. But maybe Logan was right. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to play to win. 3 days later, Elise sat in her tiny studio apartment, staring at the business card Logan Barrett had given her. Strategic Consultant, Barrett Industries, was embossed in elegant gold lettering, with her name printed underneath. Her name. On a business card. She'd called in sick to her 3 jobs, the first time she'd ever done that, to think about Logan's offer. The apartment felt different somehow, smaller and larger at the same time. Smaller because she was seeing it through the eyes of someone who might have other options. Larger because it was finally quiet enough to think. James was at school and Monica was working her part-time job at the mall. For the first time in years, Elise had the luxury of silence and solitude. Her phone buzzed. A text from Logan. Have you had a chance to think about our conversation? No pressure, but the offer stands. Elise set the phone down without responding. She walked to her closet and pulled out a cardboard box from the top shelf. Inside were her chess trophies, her old scorebooks, and a folder full of newspaper clippings from her tournament days. She hadn't looked at these in years. The first clipping was from when she was 12. Local girl wins state scholastic championship. There was a picture of her holding a trophy, grinning at the camera with a mouth full of braces. Her mother stood behind her, beaming with pride. The last clipping was from when she was 16. Thompson qualifies for U.S. Junior Championships. The picture showed an older, more serious Elise, her game face already developing. She remembered that tournament. 3 weeks later, her mother had been diagnosed with lung cancer and everything changed. Her phone rang. James. Hey sis, you okay? Monica said you called in sick to work today. I'm fine, Elise said. Just needed a day to think about some things. Think about what? Elise hesitated. She'd kept Logan's offer to herself for 3 days, not wanting to get anyone's hopes up until she'd made a decision. But sitting here surrounded by the remnants of her old life, she suddenly wanted to share it with someone. I got a job offer, she said. Another cleaning job? No, a real job. With benefits and everything. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, Elise, what are you talking about? She told him everything. The chess game, Logan's offer, the salary that was more than their family had ever dreamed of. James listened without interrupting, which was unusual for him. Holy shit, he said when she finished. Language. Sorry? But holy shit, Elise, this is incredible. You're going to take it, right? I don't know, Elise admitted. It feels too good to be true. Since when do you turn down good things because they seem too good to be true? Since I became responsible for 2 other people's lives? Elise snapped, then immediately felt bad about it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. No, you're right, James said quietly. You have been responsible for us. For 8 years. But Elise, maybe it's time for that to change. What do you mean? I mean, maybe it's time for me and Monica to be responsible for ourselves. I'm 21 years old. Monica's 18. We're not kids anymore. Elise felt a pang of something she couldn't identify. Pride. Relief? Fear. You'll always be my little brother and sister, she said. And you'll always be the person who saved us, James replied. But that doesn't mean you have to keep saving us forever. Mom wouldn't have wanted that. The mention of their mother hit Elise like a physical blow. She closed her eyes and tried to remember what her mother would have said about Logan's offer. Don't you dare make yourself smaller to make other people comfortable, baby girl. The world needs what you have to give. Her mother had said that during one of their last chess games, when Elise had been reluctant to play in a tournament because some of the other kids had made comments about her being too aggressive for a girl. You think I should take it? Elise asked. I think you should do what makes you happy, James said. When's the last time you did something just because it made you happy? Elise couldn't remember. Everything she'd done for 8 years had been about necessity, survival, taking care of others. The concept of doing something for happiness seemed foreign. I'm scared, she admitted. Of what? Of failing. Of not being good enough. Of them realizing they made a mistake. Elise, James said, and his voice was gentler than she'd heard it in years, you beat that guy at chess. In front of his entire executive team. You didn't just win, you dominated. If that's not being good enough, I don't know what is. After they hung up, Elise sat with the newspaper clippings spread around her. She picked up one from when she was 14, Thompson defeats Master in upset victory. She remembered that game. She'd been paired against a 2,300 rated Master in the first round of a tournament, and everyone expected her to lose quickly. Instead, she'd ground out a 6-hour victory that had shocked the entire tournament hall. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Monica. James told me about the job offer. OMG, Elise. Please tell me you're taking it. Before she could respond, another text came through. Also, why didn't you tell us you were some kind of chess genius? I'm looking up your old tournament results and you were famous. Elise smiled despite herself. Monica had always been the researcher in the family, the one who could find anything on the internet. Another text. Seriously, there are videos of your games on YouTube. You're like a chess celebrity and you never told us. Elise's heart stopped. Videos? She quickly opened her laptop and searched for her name. Sure enough, there were several videos of her games from major tournaments, posted by chess fans and tournament organizers. The view counts were higher than she would have expected. She clicked on one from the US Junior Championships when she was 16. The video showed her playing against a boy who was already famous in junior chess circles. She watched her younger self move pieces with quiet confidence, remembered the satisfaction of finding the winning combination. The comments were overwhelmingly positive. She was incredible at that age. Wonder what happened to her. Such a shame she disappeared from competitive chess. One comment made her pause. She had the potential to be one of the greatest female players of her generation. Real tragedy that she quit. Greatest female players of her generation. Elise stared at the words, trying to process them. She'd known she was good, but she'd never thought about what she might have become if circumstances had been different. Her phone rang again. This time it was Logan. I hope you don't mind me calling, he said. I know you need time to think, but I wanted to share something with you. Okay. I did some research after our game the other night. I looked up your tournament history. Elise's stomach dropped. Oh. I had no idea who I was playing against, Logan continued. You weren't just good, Elise. You were phenomenal. Some of the chess websites are calling you one of the great what-ifs of American chess. That's in the past. Is it? Logan asked. Because from where I'm sitting it looks like the present. You haven't lost your gift, Elise. If anything, you've gained something even more valuable: perspective. Experience. The kind of wisdom that only comes from real struggle. Elise didn't know what to say. I'm not just offering you a job, Logan continued. I'm offering you a chance to use all of who you are. The chess player, the strategist, the person who's learned to think under pressure. This company needs someone like you. Someone like me? Someone who understands that every move matters. Someone who can see the whole board while everyone else is focused on their own pieces. Someone who's learned that sometimes the best strategy is patience, and sometimes it's bold action. Elise looked at the chess trophies scattered around her, at the newspaper clippings, at the business card with her name on it. When would I start? She heard herself ask. Logan's relief was audible. Whenever you're ready. Tomorrow, next week, next month. Whatever works for you. I'll need to give notice at my other jobs. Of course. Take whatever time you need. After they hung up, Elise sat in the quiet apartment, surrounded by the artifacts of her former life. But they didn't feel like artifacts anymore. They felt like the foundation for something new. She picked up her phone and typed a text to James and Monica. I'm taking the job. The responses came immediately. James, yes. So proud of you, sis. Monica, this is the best news ever. Mom would be so proud. Mom would be so proud. Elise closed her eyes and imagined her mother's voice one more time. Don't you dare make yourself smaller to make other people comfortable, baby girl. The world needs what you have to give. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to let the world see what she could do. Maybe it was time to play to win. 2 weeks into her new job at Barrett Industries, Elise Thompson sat in her own office. An actual office with her name on the door, reviewing market analysis reports. The transition from cleaning offices to working in one had been surreal, but she was beginning to find her rhythm. Her first major assignment was analyzing their biggest competitor, Meridian Corp., which had been undercutting Barrett Industries in several key markets. Logan wanted to know how they were doing it and what Barrett could do to respond. Elise spread out financial reports, market data, and competitive intelligence across her desk like chess pieces on a board. The patterns were starting to emerge, and what she saw made her pulse quicken with the familiar thrill of seeing a winning combination. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Logan Barrett entered, followed by Patricia Chen and Thomas Webb. How's the analysis coming? Logan asked, settling into one of the chairs across from her desk. I think I found something, Elise said, turning her laptop screen toward them. But you're not going to like it. The three executives leaned forward expectantly. Meridian isn't just competing with you, Elise explained. They're playing a completely different game. While you've been focused on traditional metrics, profit margins, market share, customer retention, they've been building something else entirely. What kind of something else? Patricia asked. Elise pulled up a series of charts and graphs. They've been taking losses in your shared markets deliberately. Not because they're inefficient, but because they're using those markets as loss leaders to build customer loyalty for their premium services. Loss leaders? Thomas frowned. That's not sustainable long-term. It is if you're playing for a bigger prize, Elise said. Look at this. She highlighted a section of data. While they've been losing money competing with you on basic services, they've been quietly cornering the market on high-value consulting contracts. They're using their competitive pricing to get in the door, then upselling clients to premium services where their margins are enormous. Logan studied the data, his expression growing more serious. How long have they been doing this? About 3 years, Elise replied. But the strategy is about to pay off in a big way. Based on these projections, they're positioned to dominate the premium market within the next 18 months. Shit, Patricia muttered. Sorry? But shit. It gets worse, Elise continued. They've been specifically targeting your biggest clients with this strategy. Look at these account records. She pulled up another chart showing client retention data. Meridian has been systematically approaching your top-tier clients with below-market pricing on basic services, then gradually transitioning them to premium contracts. You've lost 12 major accounts in the past 2 years, and I don't think it was coincidence. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Thomas was the first to speak. This is corporate chess, he said, looking at Elise with something like awe. They've been playing a long game while we've been reacting move by move. Exactly, Elise said. But the good news is, now that we can see their strategy, we can counter it. How? Logan asked. Elise stood up and walked to the whiteboard on her office wall. She'd filled it with diagrams and flowcharts over the past 2 weeks, mapping out various scenarios and strategies. It looked remarkably like the analysis sheets she used to create for chess tournaments. They're playing for position, she said, drawing circles and arrows to illustrate her point. They're sacrificing short-term gains for long-term control. But their strategy has a weakness. What weakness? Patricia asked. They're overextended, Elise explained. They've committed so many resources to their loss leader strategy that they're vulnerable if someone challenges them directly on premium services. She drew more diagrams showing market positions and competitive dynamics. It's like a chess player who advances too aggressively and leaves their back rank undefended. They look strong on the surface, but they've created weaknesses that can be exploited. Logan was studying the whiteboard intently. What are you suggesting? We stop playing their game, Elise said simply. Instead of trying to match their pricing on basic services, we pivot hard into premium consulting. We use our reputation and expertise to go after the high-value clients they're counting on to make their strategy profitable. But won't that be expensive? Thomas asked. Short-term, yes, Elise admitted. But consider this. They've spent 3 years training the market to expect premium consulting services. We can leverage that expectation. Instead of building demand from scratch, we're entering a market they've already developed. She turned back to the whiteboard and drew a new diagram. Here's what I'm proposing. We launch a premium consulting division with services that go beyond what Meridian offers. While they're focused on transitioning clients from basic to premium services, we offer ultra-premium services that make their top tier look like the middle tier. Repositioning the entire market, Patricia said, understanding dawning in her voice. Making them the low-cost option instead of the premium option. Exactly. It's a classic chess tactic. You change the nature of the position so that your opponent's advantages become disadvantages. Logan walked closer to the whiteboard, studying the diagrams. This is brilliant, but it's also incredibly risky. If we're wrong about their vulnerabilities. We won't be wrong, Elise said with quiet confidence. I've run the numbers from every angle. Their strategy depends on maintaining their premium positioning while using loss leaders to grow market share. If we can establish ourselves as the true premium option, their entire model collapses. How long would it take to implement something like this? Thomas asked. 6 months to launch the new division, Elise replied. Another 6 months to see significant results. But we need to move fast. Once they realize what we're doing, they'll try to counter. Logan was quiet for a long moment, studying the whiteboard like he was contemplating a chess position. Finally, he turned back to Elise. You're talking about completely restructuring our competitive strategy based on your analysis of their long-term positioning. Yes. And you're confident this will work? Elise thought about all the chess games she'd played, all the positions she'd analyzed, all the opponents who had underestimated her ability to see the whole board. I'm confident, she said. But more than that, I think this is the only way to win. They've been playing chess while we've been playing checkers. It's time to start thinking like chess players. Patricia laughed. I love it. It's audacious and terrifying and probably exactly what we need to do. Thomas? Logan asked. What do you think? Thomas studied the whiteboard one more time. I think we'd be crazy not to try it. And I think we'd be even crazier to try it without Elise leading the analysis. Logan nodded slowly. All right, let's do it. Elise, I want you to head up the competitive strategy team for this initiative. You'll report directly to me with full authority to access whatever data you need. Full authority? Elise repeated. Full authority, Logan confirmed. You saw this opportunity when none of us could. You understand their strategy better than anyone else in this building. This is your game now. Your game. The words sent a thrill through Elise that she hadn't felt since her competitive chess days. This wasn't just about business strategy. This was about using everything she'd learned, everything she was, to outthink and outmaneuver an opponent who thought they were unbeatable. When do we start? She asked. Logan smiled. We already have. Welcome to the big leagues, Elise. Time to show them what you can do. As the 3 executives filed out of her office, chattering excitedly about implementation timelines and resource allocation, Elise turned back to her whiteboard. The diagrams and flowcharts looked like a chess position in the middle of a complex tactical sequence. But this time she wasn't just analyzing the position. She was creating it. For the first time in 8 years, Elise Thompson was playing to win. And she had no intention of losing. 6 months later, Elise stood in the same conference room where her life had changed, but everything else was different. The mahogany table was covered with quarterly reports, market analysis charts, and competitive intelligence briefs. Logan Barrett sat at the head of the table, but this time he wasn't the center of attention. All eyes were on Elise. "Ladies and gentlemen," Logan announced to the assembled board of directors, "I'd like you to meet the architect of the most successful strategic pivot in Barrett Industries history." Elise felt her cheeks warm, but she kept her composure. 6 months of high-stakes corporate strategy had taught her to manage her emotions the same way chess had: channel the intensity into focus, use the pressure to sharpen her thinking. "The numbers speak for themselves," she said, clicking to the first slide of her presentation. Meridian Corp's market share in premium consulting has dropped from 62% to 38% in the past quarter. Our share has increased from 15% to 41%. Murmurs of approval rippled around the table. Board members who had initially been skeptical of Logan's decision to promote a former cleaning lady to strategic consultant were now leaning forward with genuine interest. "More importantly," Elise continued, "we've fundamentally repositioned the entire market. Meridian is no longer seen as the premium option. They're seen as the budget alternative to our ultra-premium services." She clicked to the next slide, showing client testimonials and market research data. "Our clients aren't just buying our services," she explained. "They're buying the prestige of working with the company that outthought Meridian. We've become the chess masters and they've become the checkers players." The metaphor earned a few chuckles, but Elise could see the board members were impressed by more than just her wordplay. The financial results were undeniable. Revenue in the premium consulting division has increased by 340% over the past 6 months, she continued. Profit margins are up 180%. But most significantly, we've secured long-term contracts worth over $50 million with clients who specifically chose us because of our strategic reputation. Board member Elizabeth Morrison raised her hand. "Ms. Thompson, can you walk us through exactly how you predicted Meridian's vulnerabilities? The board is curious about your methodology." Elise had been expecting this question. 4 months she'd been proving herself not just with results, but with the logic behind her decisions. "It's the same principle as chess," she explained, moving to the whiteboard. "In chess, when your opponent commits too many pieces to an attack, they weaken their defense elsewhere. Meridian committed heavily to their loss leader strategy, which meant they had limited resources to defend their premium market position." She drew a diagram showing market positions like chess pieces on a board. They were thinking tactically, how to win individual client battles. But they weren't thinking strategically about the overall position. They left their king undefended, so to speak. "And how did you know they wouldn't adapt once they saw what you were doing?" asked board member Robert Chin. "Because they couldn't," Elise replied confidently. "They'd already committed 3 years and millions of dollars to their current strategy. Changing course would mean admitting their entire approach was wrong. Pride and sunk costs made them predictable." She clicked to another slide showing Meridian's recent quarterly reports. "Look at their response over the past 6 months. Instead of pivoting to compete with our ultra-premium services, they doubled down on their original strategy. They're offering even deeper discounts on basic services, which only reinforces our positioning as the premium option." Logan smiled with obvious pride. "It's like watching someone play chess against a master. Every move they make only strengthens her position." "Speaking of chess," said Morrison, "I understand you have quite a background in competitive play. Is it true you were nationally ranked as a teenager?" Elise nodded. "I was rated 2,100 when I stopped playing competitively. That's expert level, about top 1% of tournament players." "Why did you stop?" Robert asked. The question hung in the air. Elise had told this story many times now, but it never got easier. "Family circumstances," she said simply. "Sometimes life requires you to make choices between what you want and what's needed." "And now?" Morrison pressed gently. "Do you ever regret the choice you made?" Elise considered the question seriously. 6 months ago she might have said yes. The loss of her chess dreams had been a wound that never quite healed. But standing in this boardroom, looking at the results of her strategic work, she felt something different. "I don't regret it," she said finally. "Those 8 years taught me things I never would have learned from chess alone. They taught me about real stakes, real pressure, real consequences. They gave me perspective that makes me better at this job than I could have been straight out of college." She gestured to the charts and graphs covering the table. "Chess taught me to think strategically. But life taught me to think about more than just winning the game. It taught me to think about what happens after the game is over, about who's affected by the decisions I make. That's an interesting way to look at it, Morrison said. And it brings me to our next question. Logan has recommended you for promotion to Senior Vice President of Strategic Development. That would make you the youngest SVP in company history, and the first to reach that level without a traditional corporate background. Elise felt her heart skip. She'd known the promotion was a possibility, but hearing it stated so formally made it real. The position would come with significant responsibility, Robert added. You'd be overseeing not just competitive strategy, but long-term planning for the entire corporation. Are you prepared for that level of authority? I am, Elise replied without hesitation. But I'd want to make one thing clear. I don't want this promotion because I'm an inspiring story or because it makes good publicity. I want it because I've earned it through results. Trust me, Logan said with a laugh, inspiration had nothing to do with my recommendation. I recommended you because in 6 months, you've revolutionized how this company thinks about competition and strategy. Morrison nodded. The board has reviewed your work extensively, Miss Thompson. We're not offering this promotion out of sentiment. We're offering it because you've demonstrated executive-level strategic thinking and delivered executive-level results. So what do you say? Robert asked. Are you ready to be Barrett Industries' youngest senior vice president? Elise looked around the room at the faces watching her expectantly. A year ago, she'd been invisible to people like this. Just another service worker moving through their world without being seen. Now they were offering her a seat at the highest levels of corporate leadership. I accept, she said, and the room erupted in applause. As the board members congratulated her and began discussing implementation details, Elise felt a moment of pure clarity. This wasn't just about personal success or financial security, though both were certainly welcome. This was about proving that talent could emerge from anywhere, that the person cleaning your office might be the one with the vision to transform your company. There's one more thing, Logan said as the meeting wound down. The promotion comes with a significant salary increase and a corner office on the 45th floor. But I have a better idea for celebrating. What's that? Logan grinned. How about a rematch? I've been practicing. Elise laughed, the first truly carefree laugh she'd had in months. Mr. Barrett, with all due respect, you're still about 500 rating points too low to give me a real game. Maybe, Logan admitted. But I'd like to try anyway. For old time's sake. All right, Elise agreed. But this time let's make it interesting. When I win, Barrett Industries sponsors a chess program for underprivileged kids. Give other young people the chance I almost didn't get. And when you win, Logan corrected with a smile, Barrett Industries will sponsor the best chess program for underprivileged kids in the city. Because something tells me checkmate is inevitable. As the boardroom cleared and the executives headed off to celebrate, Elise stood alone for a moment, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. Somewhere out there were other young people with hidden talents, other dreams deferred by circumstance, other gifts waiting to be discovered. She thought about her mother who had taught her that chess was like life. Not about the fancy pieces or the expensive board, but about seeing patterns and thinking ahead and protecting what mattered most. Well, she'd protected what mattered most. Now it was time to show the world what she could do when she stopped hiding and started playing to win. Checkmate indeed. 1 year later, Elise Thompson stood in front of the Barrett Community Chess Center, watching as dozens of children from across the city filed through the doors for the grand opening. The converted warehouse in Brooklyn was alive with excitement. Kids ranging from 6 to 16, chess boards set up on dozens of tables, and volunteer instructors ready to share their love of the game. Not bad for a girl who used to clean offices, James said, appearing at her side with a grin. Hey, Elise protested, elbowing her brother gently. I still clean offices. Just now I own stock in the company. James laughed. At 22 he'd finished his automotive program and was working at a garage in Queens. More importantly, he was happy. The weight of financial stress that had shadowed their family for so long had finally lifted. Where's Monica? Elise asked, scanning the crowd. Over there, terrorizing the beginners class. James pointed to where their younger sister was explaining chess rules to a group of wide-eyed 8-year-olds. Monica was in her freshman year at Columbia studying education. She decided she wanted to be a teacher after seeing how much Elise enjoyed mentoring the new employees at Barrett Industries. Miss Thompson. A voice called out from across the room. Elise turned to see Logan Barrett approaching with a woman she didn't recognize. Logan, you made it, Elise said, giving him a warm hug. Their relationship had evolved from employer-employee to something more like mentor-friend, though he still insisted on challenging her to chess games he had no hope of winning. Wouldn't miss it, Logan replied. Elise, I'd like you to meet someone special. This is Maria Santos, the new program director. The woman stepped forward with a confident smile. Miss Thompson, it's an honor. I've been following your story in the chess world. What you've built here is incredible. Elise studied Maria's face, trying to place her. There was something familiar about her sharp eyes and confident bearing. Maria is a FIDE master, Logan explained. She was ranked in the top 50 female players in the country before she retired from competitive play to focus on chess education. A FIDE master? Elise's eyes widened. That was a serious title, just below international master level. What made you want to work with underprivileged kids? Maria's expression grew serious. Because I was one of those kids. I learned chess at a community center in the Bronx when I was 7. If not for a program like this, I never would have discovered what I was capable of. Elise felt a familiar tightness in her throat. The chess world was small, and stories like Maria's reminded her how many talented kids never got the chance to develop their gifts. Well, Elise said, welcome to the team. Let's go see how the kids are doing. They walked through the center, stopping to watch games and offer encouragement. Elise was amazed by how quickly the children were picking up the basics. At one table, a 10-year-old girl was already thinking 3 moves ahead. At another, 2 boys were engaged in serious discussion about whether knights or bishops were better pieces. Excuse me, are you the lady who beat the rich guy at chess? Elise turned to find a girl of about 12 looking up at her with curious eyes. I'm Elise Thompson, she replied, crouching down to the girl's eye level. What's your name? I'm Destiny. My mom showed me the video on YouTube. She said you used to be famous for chess but then you disappeared. I didn't disappear, Elise said gently. I just had other things I needed to take care of first. But you came back? I came back. Destiny nodded seriously. Good. My mom says sometimes you have to wait for your turn, but when it comes, you better be ready. Your mom sounds very wise. Do you like chess so far? I love it, Destiny said, her face lighting up. It's like you get to be in charge of a whole army and every decision matters. Elise smiled. That's exactly what it's like. Would you like me to show you a special move? For the next 20 minutes, Elise taught Destiny the basics of chess tactics, watching as the girl's natural talent became apparent. She had the same hungry look Elise remembered. Seeing in mirrors during her own tournament days, the look of someone who'd found their calling. Miss Thompson? Maria approached as Elise finished the lesson. We're about to start the opening ceremony. Would you like to say a few words? Elise looked around the room at the dozens of kids bent over chess boards, their faces intense with concentration. Some would discover they had real talent. Others would simply enjoy the game. But all of them would learn to think strategically, to plan ahead, to see consequences before making decisions. Actually, Elise said, I have a better idea. She walked to the center of the room and clapped her hands for attention. Gradually, the chatter died down and all eyes turned to her. Before we officially open the Barrack Community Chess Center, she announced, I'd like to play a game. A very special game. She gestured to Maria, who wheeled out a demonstration board, a large magnetic chess set that everyone could see. I'm going to play against all of you, Elise continued. Every person in this room gets to vote on each move. Majority rules. Think you can beat me? The room erupted in excited chatter. Kids began clustering around tables, already debating opening moves. But here's the thing, Elise said, raising her voice to be heard over the excitement. Chess isn't just about winning or losing. It's about thinking, learning, growing. Every game teaches you something new about yourself and about what you're capable of. She looked around the room, making eye contact with as many kids as possible. Some of you will become very strong players. Some of you might even become professionals. Others will just enjoy the game for fun. But all of you will learn something that will help you in everything else you do. How to think before you act, how to see patterns, how to never give up even when things look impossible. The room had gone completely quiet. Even the adults were hanging on her words. A year ago, I was cleaning the offices of the company I now help run. People saw my uniform and thought they knew everything about me. They thought I couldn't possibly be good at something like chess. But you know what I learned? Your circumstances don't define your potential. Your job doesn't define your worth. And other people's expectations don't define what you can achieve. She gestured to the chess sets surrounding them. This is your chance to discover what you're capable of. Don't let anyone convince you to think small. Don't let anyone tell you that dreams are impractical. And don't ever let anyone make you invisible. The applause started with Logan and spread through the room until every person was clapping. Elise felt tears threatening but held them back. This wasn't a time for crying. This was a time for beginning. Now, she said, grinning at the sea of young faces, who wants to help make the first move? Hands shot up throughout the room. As the debate began over whether to open with E4 or D4, Elise stepped back and watched the magic happen. Kids who'd never played chess before were suddenly engaged in passionate discussions about strategy. Shy children were speaking up with confidence. Natural leaders were emerging. Pretty amazing, Logan said, joining her at the edge of the action. It really is, Elise agreed. Thank you, Logan. For everything. For seeing potential where others saw limitations. For giving me a chance to prove myself. For making this possible. Thank you for reminding me that talent can come from anywhere, Logan replied. And for teaching me that sometimes the most valuable people are the ones we overlook. As the room filled with the sounds of children learning and laughing and discovering their potential, Elise thought about her mother. She could almost hear her voice, proud and encouraging. Don't you dare make yourself smaller to make other people comfortable, baby girl. The world needs what you have to give. She'd spent 8 years making herself smaller, hiding her gifts, surviving instead of thriving. But no more. Now she was using everything she'd learned, from chess, from struggle, from loss, from triumph, to create opportunities for others. The kids finally agreed on their opening move, E4. Elise responded with E5 and the game was on. But the real game, the one where talented kids from all backgrounds got the chance to discover what they were capable of, was just beginning. And this time, everybody won. Dear readers, thank you so much for joining Elise on her incredible journey from invisible to unstoppable. This story is close to my heart because it reminds us that extraordinary talent can be found anywhere, often in the people we least expect. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever underestimated someone based on their job or circumstances? What hidden talents do you think you might have that the world hasn't seen yet? Do you believe that struggles and setbacks can actually make us stronger in the long run? If you could start a program to help underprivileged kids discover their talents, what would it focus on? Your comments and thoughts mean everything to me. Please share your own stories of overcoming expectations or discovering hidden strengths. Let's celebrate the Elises in all of our lives.